This page features the cover of 64 magazine, celebrating their 50th issue milestone. The main focus is the exclusive review for Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. It also highlights coverage of Star Wars Episode 1, Battle for Naboo, Scooby-Doo, Classic Creep Capers, Conker's BFD, and Power Rangers, plus boasts over 1,000 cheats included. This page is the editorial spread, celebrating the magazine's impressive 50th issue. The editor, Roy Kimber, reflects on the journey of 64 magazine, talks about the team behind it, Roy, Nikki, Paul and Alex, and looks forward to Nintendo's plans with N64 games still on the horizon and the Game Boy Advance and GameCube coming up. He points out the big reviews featured in this particular issue, specifically mentioning Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, and Star Wars Episode 1, Battle for Naboo. There's a cracking visual with Mario and Banjo-Kazooie, proudly displaying the magazine cover. The page also gives a nod to all the staff who have contributed to the magazine over the years. And naturally, there's a prominent section for the Cheats Unlimited service, advertising hints, tips, and walkthroughs for a huge number of games across plenty of different consoles, including all the N64 classics you could possibly need help with. This page is the contents list for the big 50th issue celebration, laying out all the fantastic N64 content inside. It flags up the major reviews, including the big one for Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, and Star Wars Episode 1, Battle for Naboo, just like the editorial promised. You'll also find reviews for Scooby-Doo, Classic Creep Capers and Power Rangers, Lightspeed Rescue. The quick search box highlights other N64 hits like Conker's Bad Fur Day and Paper Mario. Features cover the magazine's history and look ahead to what Nintendo has planned with the GameCube, plus there are sections for game cheats and showcases. This page kicks off the showcase section, bringing us the latest industry buzz. The big news is that Sega is exiting the hardware market after the Dreamcast, shifting focus entirely to software development for other platforms, including Nintendo's GameCube and Game Boy Advance. This opens up the possibility of seeing classic Sega franchises, like Sonic appearing on Nintendo systems, alongside titles like Choo Choo Rocket, and maybe even Sega Rally 3. Meanwhile, Nintendo is clearly on a roll, with massive anticipation and pre-orders for the upcoming Game Boy Advance handheld. President Yamauchi is very optimistic about its success. The page gives us a look at some of the exciting GBA launch titles, including Mario Advance, which looks like a return to the classic Super Mario Bros. 2 style, and previews of Mario Kart Advance and F-Zero Advance, showing off the racing action. It's a fascinating time, seeing former rivals like Sega and Nintendo potentially collaborating on games. This page previews upcoming titles and industry news. Conker's Bad Fur Day's unusual PR campaign reflects its edgy reputation. THQ secured the Hot Wheels license for major consoles, including N64. The Most Wanted section emphasizes the hype for Game Boy Advance games, including F-Zero Advance, Mario Advance, and Mario Kart Advance. Capcom announced Resident Evil 4, planned for all major consoles, but never released on N64. Nintendo's sales are strong, particularly the Game Boy and Pokémon. A sarcastic comment is made on the Xbox controller design. Screenshots of the promising GBA RPG Magical Vacation are also featured, along with the magazine's current top game charts. Mastique. This page features the letters section, where readers have their say on N64 matters. Topics include the perceived high price of N64 cartridges compared to PlayStation games, with a nod to the difficulty found in classics like Banjo-Tooie and Zelda. There's also discussion about the future consoles looming, the cost of game development, and a mention of some less than stellar N64 releases like Carmageddon 64 and Superman 64. The Star Letter winner gets a prize of top N64 chart games. Screenshots show World Grand Prix, Mario Tennis, Quake, and Vigilante 8. This page features the 64 letters section, where readers write in about their N64 experiences and questions. Topics include a search for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on N64, which was indeed released, but perhaps had limited availability. There's discussion about cheats for Mario Party 2 and Banjo-Kazooie, and a reader shares a humorous trick involving Pokémon. A keen eye spots a specific detail in Majora's Mask, noting a character wearing a Mario mask. Screenshots show a skater, Pikachu, and Link from Majora's Mask. The page also features a large competition offering prizes, including an N64 console. This page gives us a look at Conker's Bad Fur Day, a game that really stood out on the N64. The article discusses how Nintendo's console was often seen as the cute one, full of family-friendly titles like Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie and Smash Bros., but Conker completely flipped that expectation on its head. Starting life as a much cuter game, Conker 64, it transformed into something completely different during development. The preview highlights the game's adult humor and violence, describing it as foul-mouthed and depraved, a stark contrast to its seemingly cute cartoon animal characters. The screenshots certainly back this up, showing Conker in action, interacting with some questionable characters and situations, including a teddy bear character armed to the teeth and dialogue that hints at the game's darker tone. Published by Nintendo and developed by Rare, this was a bold move, and the final game certainly delivered on the promise of being anything but the typical N64 fare. It was indeed released, and is now a cult classic known for its mature themes and unique style. This page continues the look at Conker's Bad Fur Day, reinforcing just how much it broke the mold for Nintendo games. It highlights the sheer adult nature of the humor, giving specific examples like battling a boss entirely made of feces, and the segment where Conker turns into a vampire needing to hunt down prey. It also mentions the foul language, and the references to films like The Matrix and Saving Private Ryan, really cementing that this isn't the cute platformer some might have expected. Rare really went all out to make something different and genuinely hilarious, albeit rather depraved. The screenshots show off some of these bizarre situations and characters you encounter. It was certainly a game many of us were eagerly anticipating a UK release for. There are also adverts on the page from Telegames and GameStation, showing off some of the games and consoles available for sale at the time, including N64 titles. This page gives us a good look at Paper Mario for the N64. It highlights the game's unique visual style, where Mario and other main characters are presented as flat, paper cutouts in a 3D world. It mentions this look is a deliberate choice, and not due to the graphics being basic, noting the graphics are still beautifully animated. The article explains that this isn't a traditional Mario platformer, but mixes in RPG elements. Battles are turn-based, requiring strategy beyond just jumping on enemies. You gather friends or allies, each with unique abilities, who are crucial for solving puzzles and progressing through the world, including tasks Mario can't do alone like moving heavy objects or traversing specific areas. The screenshots show off this distinct visual style in various environments, including Bowser's Castle, a snowy area, a library, a park, and what looks like the inside of a train or airship. The article notes the game was developed by Intelligent Systems and published by Nintendo, with a planned UK release in September. It seems the magazine was quite excited about this blend of genres, and the fresh take on the Mario universe. It certainly stood out from other N64 titles with its unique presentation and gameplay mechanics. This page features Dance Dance Revolution, Disney's World Dancing Museum for the N64. It talks about the growing popularity of dancing games, and how this one brings it to the N64 with a Disney twist. You match foot movements on a mat to arrows on the screen in time with the music. The game features classic Disney characters like Mickey, Minnie, Donald, and Scrooge McDuck, as seen in the screenshots, performing across various colorful stages. The article notes it was developed by KCEK and published by Konami, with the UK release listed as TBA. Sadly, based on my knowledge, this one never actually made it out over here, which is a shame for N64 owners looking for a bit of rhythmic fun with Disney characters. It looked like a bright and cheerful version of the popular arcade game. The right side of the page is an advert for P2, a PlayStation 2 magazine, highlighting its 5th issue, which is available on February 1, 2001, promising PS2 game reviews and DVD reviews. This page celebrates the 50th birthday of 64 magazine, bringing back original editor and Zendi McDermott for a retrospective look. It features striking artwork of a huge golden 50th and a comical image of Luigi. The article recounts the magazine's beginnings and evolution, with Anizundi sharing his perspective. Several past magazine covers are displayed, showcasing key issues. Cover highlights include Issue 1, the launch issue featuring Super Mario 64, and Wave Race 64. Issue 14 is shown with a World Cup '98 theme, mentioning games like Forsaken, Buck Bumble, and Quake. Issue 10 features Yoshi's story, also listing Nagano Olympics, Art of Fighting, Snowboard Kids, and Rally. Issue 16 showcases Banjo-Kazooie, alongside Star Wars, Rogue Squadron, Mortal Kombat 4, and Quest 64. There's also artwork of Yoshi, Banjo, and Donkey Kong, plus a shot of a purple Nintendo 64 console and controller. The page captures the journey of the magazine through its landmark issues, and the games they covered. This page continues the 50th issue feature with original editor and Judy McDermott's reflections on the Nintendo 64 era and the magazine's journey. It highlights his best moment, being a trip to Japan for Space World, and the travel travails involved. His worst moment was the legal threat faced by the magazine. The page also delves into Nintendo Superbrains, discussing perceived baffling decisions made with the N64, such as sticking with cartridges over CD-ROMs and holding back the console's release compared to Japan, contrasting the N64 with the PlayStation. Artwork here shows the N64 and PlayStation consoles side by side, along with Banjo and Kazooie and Pikachu, representing the focus on character-driven games. Finally, Andy provides his personal best and the worst lists of games over the 3-year period. His top 5 games were GoldenEye, Zelda, specifically Ocarina of Time, judging by the screenshot, F1 World Grand Prix, Resident Evil 2, and Puyo Puyo Sun 64, noting the latter never got a UK release. Conversely, his worst 5 included Carmageddon, Superman 64, famously poor, Clay Fighter 63 1/3, Cruisin' USA, and Paperboy 64. The page features screenshots from each of these ranked games, and prominent artwork of Link riding Epona, Donkey Kong, and Spider-Man. This page continues the 50th issue retrospective, looking back at experiences covering the N64 era. It kicks off with a look at industry events like Space World in Japan and ECTS in London, highlighting the unique blend of excitement and hassle involved in attending these shows. They reminisce about seeing new games and dealing with PR folks, with mentions of games and magazine covers from the past like Hercules, Banjo-Tooie, and Indiana Jones. There's also a section revisiting past predictions about the N64's successor, the GameCube, noting what they got right and wrong about its features like the move away from cartridges and the controller design. For aspiring journalists, there's a candid set of tips on how to handle yourself when covering games. Finally, the team shares their personal favorite and least favorite 64 games, including titles like Duck Dodgers, GoldenEye, the Japanese release Sin and Punishment, Banjo-Tooie, Ready to Rumble 2, Conker's Bad Fur Day which wasn't out yet, and Power Rangers. Screenshots from several of these games are shown alongside the team members. This page is the second part of the feature, looking ahead to the next generation, titled The Future's N-Shaped. It delves into the upcoming console war, specifically comparing Nintendo's GameCube with Microsoft's Xbox and Sony's PS2. The article tackles some of the technical specifications being touted by Microsoft for the Xbox, contrasting them with how the GameCube achieves performance, like using texture compression instead of brute force memory. It highlights the polygon performance figures, and quotes benchmarks from EA Canada, showing impressive results on the GameCube. There are images of the Xbox console and controller, the GameCube console and controller, a shot of Link from Zelda, the Wind Waker, and what looks like Lara Croft from Tomb Raider, alongside other gameplay screenshots. It also touches on Microsoft's potential challenges in the Japanese market. This page continues the look into the future, following on from the previous page's focus on GameCube and Xbox. It delves into the PlayStation 2 situation, noting that after much hype, there weren't many standout games out yet, mentioning The Bouncer, Gran Turismo 3, and Metal Gear Solid being delayed. The article suggests the PS2's early performance was underwhelming. It also turns its attention to Sega's plans, highlighting that the company is keeping quiet but rumors suggest they'll be bringing their classic franchises like House of the Dead, Virtua Fighter, Daytona, and Sonic to other platforms, hopefully including the GameCube. The page touches on Square's Final Fantasy X being delayed to coincide with the GameCube launch in Japan, indicating Square's support for Nintendo. It also notes the potential connectivity between the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance, which is doing well. The console battle for the upcoming generation looks set to be fierce across Japan, the US, and Europe. Images include the PS2 console, Sonic, characters from Street Fighter, screenshots from games like The Bouncer, what looks like a racing game, Daytona, a mech game, and a Game Boy Advance handheld. This page carries on the deep dive into the future of gaming, putting the spotlight squarely on the Nintendo GameCube. There's a bit of news first, confirming Squaresoft's interest in developing for Nintendo and LEGO Media, bringing Technic games to the console. It highlights a great quote from developers saying they're only just scratching the surface of what the machine can do. Capcom's Resident Evil 4 is also mentioned as coming to GameCube in Japan later that year, and Atlus is fully backing the console after doing less on the N64. The article then gets technical, explaining how the GameCube's design makes it much easier for developers to program compared to the PlayStation 2, allowing them to push the machine's limits faster. It notes that while the raw memory might look less on paper than the Xbox, smart architecture like fast memory and hardware texture compression means the CPU doesn't need to work as hard, making those comparisons less important than how easy it is to get good results. You can see images of characters from Silicon Knights Eternal Darkness, what looks like Jill Valentine, Mario in render and screenshots from Super Mario RPG, plus some other shots that might be early looks at GameCube games, along with the console and controller themselves. The next page continues the look ahead to Nintendo's next console, picking up the technical chat about how it's designed, touching on the memory setup and data flow. It highlights that while numbers on paper might look less than the competition, the clever architecture helps developers get great results more easily. There's also a big focus on sound, noting the N64's lack of a dedicated sound chip was a challenge, but the new console has a proper one, and developers like Factor 5 are already creating excellent sound tools for it, mentioning past examples like Zelda and Star Wars Rogue Squadron. We see images of the GameCube's Flipper and Gecko chips, what looks like a crowd of Marios, plus character art for Solid Snake, who later appeared on GameCube in Metal Gear Solid, The Twin Snakes, and Samus Aran, from the upcoming Metroid Prime. The right side is a large advertisement for the Total Games website, showcasing various gaming platforms like Dreamcast, PS1, PlayStation 2, GameCube, Nintendo 64, Game Boy, Xbox, and PC CD-ROM. This page kicks off the reviews section, laying out exactly how 64 magazine rates games. It breaks down the various info boxes you'll see throughout the reviews, like the Ninfo, which covers player count and peripheral compatibility, Expansion Pack, Rumble Pack, the $64,000 question for pros and cons, and memory options for saves. It also touches on PAL performance for import games, and who supplied the game. The core of the system is explained. Graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge are rated out of 5 little N64 controller icons. There's a guide explaining what each score means, from faultless 5-icon games, down to complete rubbish with 1 icon. The final overall score is a percentage, with different tiers earning awards like the Gold Medal, 95% plus, or the Sizzler Award, 9,094%. It's made clear the final score isn't just an average, but the magazine's definitive rating. Also shown are glimpses of games reviewed later, featuring Indiana Jones from Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, Spacecraft from Star Wars Episode 1, Battle for Naboo, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, Classic Creep Capers, and a green Power Ranger from Power Rangers, Lightspeed Rescue. The bottom line section starts here too, explaining the sometimes confusing N64 controller layout. This page dives straight into a review of Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. It sets the scene in 1947, post-war, with Indy facing a new threat from the emerging communist power who are after a mythical ancient machine. The review highlights that this isn't a quick game to finish, emphasizing its scope and puzzle-solving nature, comparing it to classic adventure films. It points out that the game feels very much like an Indiana Jones adventure, complete with the classic music and settings. Screenshots show Indy exploring various locations, including what looks like a desert dig site, an underwater section with a torpedo, and some indoor areas. The usual review boxes are present, covering the game's pros and cons in the $64,000 question, and details like player count and peripheral support in the Ninfo section, confirming it uses the memory pack for saves, and wasn't released in the UK at this time, being an import. It was developed by Factor 5, and published by LucasArts. This page continues the review of Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. It details the gameplay, highlighting that it's a third-person perspective adventure game very much in the style of Tomb Raider, with Indy possessing many of Lara Croft's moves like walking, jumping, swimming, and crouching. The review points out that Indy's iconic whip is used primarily for puzzle solving, grappling onto specific points rather than combat, which is handled mostly with guns. The game is described as a very involving and genuinely exciting 3D platform adventure, focusing heavily on puzzle solving, figuring out routes through hazardous levels, and tricky platforming sections. Before the game starts, you get a cool newsreel-style intro that sets the political scene in 1947, mentioning the surrender of the Axis and the rise of the Soviets. There are also amusing sidebars about a great new diet, and the plot involving ancient machinery. One notable glitch mentioned is the "that darn hat" issue where Indy's hat doesn't always reappear after swimming, which frustratingly prevents him from using objects until you make him swim again. Screenshots show Indy preparing a torpedo with his knife, using his whip, exploring a starting plateau area, being underwater wielding a machete against piranhas, and demonstrating the hat glitch on a coastal level. The Indiana Jones game review details a structure with 18 stages, replayable for secrets, and a trading post for supplies. The game features diverse enemies, including venomous creatures and formidable guardian monsters. Combat relies primarily on guns, while the whip is crucial for navigation. Graphically, the N64 port is decent, though some details are basic. Indy's model and animations are praised. The game incorporates vehicle sections, specifically a dinghy, adding another gameplay element. Precise platforming is essential, mirroring the challenge of early Tomb Raider games. Sidebars discuss whip usage, the significance of antiques, the ice monster boss, the PC to N64 transition, vehicle sections, and frustrating jumps. Screenshots depict key moments, including Indy's confrontations and exploration. This page carries on with the review of Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. It talks more about the platforming, noting that unlike games where jumps are fixed distances, indies require careful timing, similar to early Tomb Raider titles. It highlights that while the controls can be responsive, they can sometimes fail, leading to frustrating missed jumps. A significant issue mentioned is the saving system, which can place you near the save point but not exactly where you were, which can be particularly annoying on tricky platforming sections. Despite these frustrations with jumping and saving, the review states the game is incredibly involving and enjoyable. It praises the audio, mentioning Indy's voice actor sounds familiar and fitting, and highlights the sheer amount of speech throughout the game as outstanding. Cinema-style audio cues help signify important moments. Screenshots show a mystical flower that is key to a puzzle, Indy talking to a cleaner, and illustrations of Indy using his whip and potentially a villain. Alternatives are listed as Duke Nukem, 0 Hour, and Legend of Zelda. The rating section provides a visual breakdown showing ratings for graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge, using the N64 logos, all appearing quite high. The overall score is revealed as 90%. The soundbite says Indy's first N64 outing looks pretty good. A second opinion also praises the game as a thoroughly entertaining experience that keeps the mind engaged and the action flowing, calling it a must-have. This page kicks off the review for Star Wars Episode 1, Battle for Naboo. It's developed by Factor 5, the chaps behind the cracking Rogue Squadron games, so expectations are high. The review notes the film was a bit divisive, but the game itself seems to be shaping up well, definitely worthy of a closer look. You're tasked with saving Naboo by piloting various ships and speeders, taking on hordes of battle droids and Federation forces. The gameplay is a shoot-'em-up, similar to Rogue Squadron but apparently much better looking. Screenshots show off the impressive graphics, especially the detailed architecture of the bead. There's also a look at the intro sequence, which seems quite dynamic, even featuring a rather unfortunate moment for everyone's favorite Gungan, Jar Jar Binks. The $64,000 question panel lists the good points, like it being Star Wars, being more enjoyable than the movie, lovely graphics, a decent challenge, and lots of different ships to fly. On the downside, it can get a bit samey, and, rather amusingly, lists that you can't, deal with Jar Jar Binks permanently. The Nympho box confirms it's a single-player import title that requires the expansion pack. Looks like a solid shooter for the N64. This review of Star Wars, Episode I, Battle for Naboo praises the game's improvements over other N64 flight/shooter titles. The reviewer highlights the ability to switch ships mid-mission as a welcome addition, adding depth and variety to the gameplay. The game's visuals are described as stunning, with detailed environments and explosive action. Comparisons are made to games like Lylat Wars, Shadows of the Empire, and Rogue Squadron, noting that Battle for Naboo feels larger, less linear, and a significant evolution, built upon the foundation of Rogue Squadron's engine, refining controls and special moves. The article emphasizes the refined gameplay and visual improvements, making Battle for Naboo a strong contender. The next page continues the review of Star Wars, Episode 1, Battle for Naboo. It delves deeper into the gameplay, praising the intense dogfights, particularly in the swamp levels, and highlights the strong focus on team-based strategy and relying on your wingmen. The review notes that while LucasArts and Factor 5 built upon Rogue Squadron's engine and made significant improvements, the levels can still feel a bit linear, despite the visual detail. It mentions that seasoned players might find it repetitive after a while, comparing it to Lylat Wars, Rogue Squadron, and Forsaken. A point of criticism is the lack of famous characters from the films in the game, despite having the Star Wars license. However, the review points out cool unlockable features like developer commentary and early design sketches available via cheat codes like TalkTome and Cool Stuff. Screenshots show various types of combat including space battles, ground vehicle sections with ATSTS, and cockpit views. There's also a quirky sidebar highlighting a strange audio anomaly in the game that seems to pull a line from A New Hope. The expansion pack is mentioned as being utilized for extended gameplay. This page continues the review for Star Wars, Episode 1, Battle for Naboo. It goes into more detail on the gameplay and controls, noting that while they're easy to pick up, mastering them takes time, much like a good shoot-'em-up should. The reviewer feels a strong sense of déjà vu from Rogue Squadron, comparing the game's strengths and weaknesses to that earlier title. Other quality games mentioned alongside Battle for Naboo include Sin and Punishment, Perfect Dark, and Banjo-Tooie. The review provides specific ratings for graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge, culminating in a solid overall score of 89%. A concise soundbite summarizes the overall impression. Screenshots on the page show action from different levels, including ground combat and ship sequences. A second opinion is also featured, praising the game as a top-notch shoot-'em-up despite being a bit more linear than Rogue Squadron. The review also lists Rogue Squadron and Lilat Wars as alternatives. This page dives into a review of Scooby-Doo, Classic Creep Capers on the N64. It explains that the game is based on the classic cartoon series, pitting you against a spooky foe in each of the 4 environments. You primarily play as Shaggy and Scooby, solving puzzles and hiding from ghosts. The review touches on the gameplay mechanics, mentioning they use Shaggy as bait for traps, just like in the show, and highlights the familiar pattern of unmasking the villain. The $64,000 question section lists the game's upsides as being Scooby-Doo, having interesting puzzles and jokes, offering some frights, and being quite fun. On the downside, it notes awkward controls, dodgy camera angles, and that it's not too mentally taxing. Screenshots show Shaggy in various locations, like a temple, outside a house, and a forest path, demonstrating the game's different areas. There's also a sidebar explaining the game's hide-and-seek mechanic for evading ghosts, and another about the memory pack requirement for saving progress. Overall, it gives a sense of the game capturing the spirit of the show, offering an undemanding scavenger hunt adventure. This page continues the look at Scooby-Doo, Classic Creep Capers for the N64. As discussed before, you're stepping into the shoes of Shaggy and Scooby, working through mysteries inspired by the original cartoon. The review here expands on how you evade the spooky villains, often requiring you to hot-foot it downhill to escape. It details the courage meter mechanic. Shaggy's courage shrinks when a ghoul gets too close, and you need to find Scooby snacks or head to the kitchen for a midnight snack minigame to replenish it. The game adapts stories from classic episodes, featuring levels based on What a Night for a Night, That's Snow Ghost, A Tiki Scare is No Fair, and The Case of the Classic Creeps. Screenshots across the page highlight the variety of locations you'll explore, from snowy mountains and tropical beaches to creepy museums and haunted houses, all rendered in that distinct N64 style. The review notes that Scooby doesn't always help matters, sometimes getting in Shaggy's way, and mentions the camera perspective can be a bit awkward at times. It also points out that the puzzle-solving aspect isn't overly taxing, reinforcing the idea from the previous page that it's more of a straightforward scavenger hunt adventure true to the spirit of the show, complete with the classic "You meddling kids" line. This page continues the review of Scooby-Doo, Classic Creep Capers on the N64. It expands on the gameplay, mentioning how you handle encounters with the spooky characters often involves running away, and managing Shaggy's courage level, which drops when ghosts are near, and needs boosting with Scooby snacks or kitchen visits. The review notes the game uses camera angles that shift, sometimes making controls a bit tricky, though manageable with patience. It covers the puzzle solving, describing it as more of a straightforward search for items than complex brain teasers, tied into recreating classic Scooby-Doo mysteries. Finding clues can occasionally be a bit tricky, hidden in obscure spots. The humor from the show is captured well, even down to Scooby's silly lines, and Fred's rather self-important attitude in the game. There are even fun nods to other Hanna-Barbera cartoons hidden away in the levels. The graphics are in that distinct N64 style, faithful to the look of the cartoon. It shows the control layout for the N64 pad, and lists a couple of alternative games, including Duck Dodgers, starring Daffy Duck, another N64 title. The game gets a rating breakdown across graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge, culminating in an overall score of 78%. There's also a second opinion provided, offering a slightly different take on the game's control system and overall score. This page features a review of Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue for the Nintendo 64. The review is overwhelmingly negative, framing the game as a prime example of a quickly produced title cashing in on a popular trend. It discusses the enduring nature of the Power Rangers craze, and expresses surprise that it's still relevant enough to warrant an N64 game. The reviewer clearly considers it unnecessary and a waste of effort. The game is highlighted as being particularly poor, even earning a spot in the magazine's "What a Terrible Game" Hall of Fame. This section lists other notoriously bad N64 titles like Superman, Clay Fighter, and Carmageddon 64, noting their low review scores as context for how badly Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue performed. The review includes screenshots showing the game's top-down perspective gameplay and some character art. Basic game details such as the publisher, THQ, developer, mass media, and Origin USA are also present, confirming it was indeed released on the N64, despite the scathing review. The overall message is clear. This game is considered among the worst available on the system. This page continues the review of Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue for the Nintendo 64, delving deeper into why it's considered such a poor title. It discusses the game's ending and unlockable secret levels, which offer little excitement. There's mention of a Robot Wars mode, where you can use unlocked characters in a disappointing two-player arena battle. The review highlights the game's various modes, including fighting, driving, and bird's-eye views, but stresses the complete lack of challenge across all of them, even noting the reviewer dozed off while playing. The graphics are described as dull and repetitive, with environments looking largely the same. It points out the game is short and can be finished easily, almost on autopilot. The page includes screenshots showing these different gameplay perspectives and character models like the Green and Red Rangers. An alternative section suggests Spider-Man Activision as a far better option. The ratings reflect the extreme negativity across graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge, culminating in an exceptionally low overall score of 25%. A second opinion reinforces the view that it's among the worst games ever released. The soundbite notes, it's the first game in the magazine's history to score less than 0. This page features a dedicated section within the magazine covering the Game Boy Color. It acts as an enclave from a sister publication, providing readers with news and reviews specifically for Game Boy Color titles. The section explains its scoring system, detailing how graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge contribute to an overall score, similar to the main magazine but tailored for Game Boy. It also defines key information points like Ninfo, covering features like link cable support and saves, alongside a question section summarizing pros and cons, and a soundbite for a quick take. Several Game Boy Color titles reviewed in this section are listed, accompanied by screenshots from different games and images of the Game Boy Color console itself. This page features a couple of cracking reviews from the Game Boy Color section. First up is Pokemon Gold/Silver, which gets a fantastic write-up, described as incredibly addictive and packed with things to do, noting the real-time element and heaps of new Pokemon. Is clearly highly recommended, scoring a massive 90% overall. There are screenshots showing the classic top-down view of the world and battles, plus the title screen. Then there's the review for Ultimate Fighting Championship. Blimey, this one doesn't pull any punches. It's panned as a complete waste of time, criticizing the repetitive gameplay and lack of challenge, and it gets a brutal overall score of just 22%. Screenshots show the fighter selection and some rather basic-looking in-game fights. Both reviews include the breakdown of scores for graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge, along with a quick summary of pros and cons and a soundbite. This page dives into the Game Boy Color reviews, kicking off with Godzilla Monster Wars. This one is based on the animated series, featuring the big guy himself battling various beasts. The graphics are noted as decent, but apparently, the rest of the game falls flat, being described as pretty awful with awkward controls. It clocks in at a low 35% overall score. Next up is The Emperor's New Groove, taking the popular Disney film and turning it into a Game Boy Color title. You play as Kuzco the llama, tackling levels through headbutting and spitting. It's called out for being repetitive, with dull levels and handling that's compared unfavorably to Pac-Man. The puzzle elements don't fare much better either. The overall verdict lands just slightly higher than Godzilla, at 40%. Both pages feature screenshots showing the gameplay and character portraits. This page delivers a couple of crackers for the Game Boy Color. First up is and also has racing, which takes the characters from the film and puts them in a racing game. It's presented from an isometric view and gets compared to Mario Kart, but the review says the playability is spot on, with loads of tracks and varied power-ups making it great fun. It features the Ant Z and other characters. The overall score is a cracking 93%, calling it a rip-roaring racer for the handheld. Then we have Mr. Driller, a brilliant little puzzle game. It's a simple concept: drill downwards through colored blocks, avoiding getting crushed and managing your air supply. It's described as having frantic gameplay, very much in the vein of classic arcade games like Boulder Dash. The review notes the story isn't the main focus, but the gameplay is hugely addictive. This one was a popular arcade title and made its way to a few systems, and it clearly works a treat on the Game Boy Color, earning an excellent 91% overall. Both games are clearly top-tier Game Boy Color releases according to these reviews. This page features a review of the Dukes of Hazzard, Racing for Home on the Game Boy Color. It's an isometric racing and exploration game based on the classic TV show, letting you drive the General Lee around Hazzard County. The review notes that while previous Dukes games weren't great, this GBC version is much better. It highlights the varied missions and the freedom to roam the map, which is a refreshing change for a racing game. The steering can be a bit unresponsive at times, especially when trying to nab villains, but overall, it's considered an extremely entertaining title. The graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge all score highly. Pros mentioned include the speed, decent opposition AI, and varied levels, with the controls being a slight con. It earns a cracking overall score of 90%, with the soundbite calling it lightning-fast power-sliding fun. The Ninfobox confirms it's a driving game published by South Peak Interactive and developed by Spellbound. Alongside the review, there's a section dedicated to ordering back issues of 64 magazine. This allows readers to catch up on past reviews, tips, and news they might have missed. It showcases covers featuring major N64 titles like Zelda 2, Majora's Mask, Spider-Man, and Banjo-Tooie, giving a taste of the sort of content available. There's a form provided for ordering specific issues from issue 20 right up to 49, along with details for payment by check or credit card, including a hotline number. This page is the Score Zone, where players send in their top times and scores for various N64 games. Featured this month are results for Perfect Dark, GoldenEye, Diddy Kong Racing, Zelda, Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, specifically the fishing, Quake 2, Extreme G, The World Is Not Enough, WCW/Nitro, Yoshi's Story, Tetrisphere, Shadows of the Empire, Pokemon Snap, and Int Track and Field, Summer Games. They're also looking for scores for Donald Duck's Quack Attack, Rush 2049, and Mickey's Speedway USA. It's all about showing off your skills on the toughest challenges. The next page continues the Score Zone, showcasing top times and scores for Star Wars, Episode 1 Racer, Mario Kart 64, Micro Machines, Star Wars, Rogue Squadron, Quake 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and Monster Truck Madness. It's where players show off their best runs on these classic N64 titles. There's also a feature on the Ultimate Player competition, detailing the prize for the monthly champion, a rather nice 3" 1 steering wheel peripheral, suitable for the N64 among others. Finally, there's an advertisement for the 64 Solutions Cheats hotline, offering tips and codes over the phone. This page kicks off the A to Z of hints, tips and cheats, covering a wide range of N64 games. You've got cheats and tips listed for titles like Air Border 64, Army Men, Sarge's Heroes 1 and 2, Banjo-Tooie, Battle Tanks and its Global Assault sequel, Biofreaks, Bomberman Hero, Buck Bumble, and Body Harvest. It's packed with codes for things like unlocking characters, gaining invincibility, getting all weapons, accessing levels, and other helpful boosts. The page is adorned with a collage of N64 characters, including some familiar faces from Toy Story, Donkey Kong Country, South Park, and James Bond, plus a few screenshots showing action from games like Army Men, Battle Tanks, Aerofighters Assault, and Buck Bumble. This page continues the Cheat Central guide, laying out codes and tips for a whole host of N64 classics. You've got crucial info here for Command & Conquer, Cruisin' Exotica, Destruction Derby 64, the brilliant Diddy Kong Racing, Doom 64, Duke Nukem 64, Excitebike 64, Extreme Egg, F1 World Grand Prix, Fighter's Destiny, and of course the absolute legend that is GoldenEye. The cheats cover everything from unlocking characters and modes, to getting unlimited items and invincibility. The page is packed with familiar faces, featuring characters from games like GoldenEye, Diddy Kong Racing, Toy Story 2, Mortal Kombat, South Park, and Duke Nukem 64, alongside screenshots showing action from racing games, fighting titles, and strategy gameplay. This page continues the Cheat Central guide, packing in loads more cheats for a massive range of N64 titles. You've got tips and tricks for games like Mace, The Dark Age, Mario Golf, Mission Impossible, the Multi-Racing Championship, Mischief Makers, International Superstar Soccer, 98, Mario Party, Mortal Kombat Trilogy and Mortal Kombat 4, Micro Machines 64, NHL Breakaway 98, and NFL Blitz 2001. The cheats cover everything from unlocking characters and modes, like the various Mortal Kombat fighters and hidden characters in sports games, to getting extra options and altering gameplay mechanics. The page is visually busy, featuring a mix of screenshots and character artwork. You can spot shots from International Superstar Soccer, 98, racing games, and what looks like Mario Golf and Mortal Kombat. The characters are a fantastic mix, including fighters from Mace and Mortal Kombat, the South Park lads, Joanna Dark from Perfect Dark, Fox McCloud from Star Fox 64, Buzz Lightyear, Donkey Kong, and characters from Mario Golf and Mischief Makers. It's a real snapshot of the N64's diverse library of games. This page carries on the Cheat Central section, cramming in even more codes for a massive array of N64 titles. You've got unlocks for games like Perfect Dark, including those classic GoldenEye-style weapons, characters in Mace, The Dark Age, Mortal Kombat, Ready to Rumble Boxing, and International Superstar Soccer 98, plus various modes and levels for races like Off-Road Challenge, Road Rash 64, and Rush 2, Extreme Racing USA. There are also handy cheats for games like Resident Evil 2 and the Quake titles, offering things like invincibility or level access. A rather curious cheat for Mewtwo is listed under Rakuga Kids, which is a bit odd for a fighting game. Visually, the page is packed, showcasing a fantastic mix of characters from loads of N64 hits. You can see the lads from South Park, Joanna Dark from Perfect Dark, James Bond, fighters from Mortal Kombat and Mace, plus familiar faces like Donkey Kong, Buzz Lightyear, and the alien from Toy Story. There are also screenshots showing the action from Off-Road Challenge, the boxing in Ready to Rumble, the destruction in Rampage 2, and the racing in Road Rash 64. It really highlights the breadth of games on the system. This page carries on the Cheat Central section, absolutely packed with codes for a massive selection of N64 games. You've got cheats for everything from racing games like San Francisco Rush 2049 and Cruisin' USA, to shooters like GoldenEye 007 and Perfect Dark, and even fighters like Mortal Kombat 4 and Mace, The Dark Age. There are also codes for classics, like Star Wars Episode I, Racer and Star Wars Rogue Squadron, plus fun stuff for South Park and Snowboard Kids. The page is a visual treat too, with characters from countless N64 hits crammed in, alongside screenshots showing off games like Off-Road Challenge, Road Rash 64, and Rampage 2. It's a cracking resource for getting an edge, or just messing about. This page continues the Cheat Central section, absolutely crammed with useful tips and codes for a huge range of N64 games. You've got cheats for everything from getting stuck into GoldenEye 007 and its cracking sequel The World Is Not Enough, to mastering the complexities of Zelda, Majora's Mask, and getting the upper hand in Super Smash Bros. There are also codes for fan favorites, like the Turok series, Top Gear Overdrive, and Twisted Edge. Extreme snowboarding. Interestingly, there's a mention of Avi the Alien, which never actually saw an official N64 release. Just a bit of magazine intrigue there. Visually, the page is dominated by a fantastic collage, featuring loads of characters from iconic N64 titles. Plus there are screenshots highlighting games like Superman 64, Turok 3, and Top Gear Overdrive. Finally, there's a nice touch at the end, thanking readers for sending in their own cheats. This page is packed with special offers and subscription deals for 64 magazine. You've got a chance to pick up some cracking strategy guides for games like Turok 2, Zelda 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and Donkey Kong 64 at discounted prices. There's also a subscription offer where you get free issues and a solutions book, plus the option to get a game for a decent price, with screenshots showing top titles like Mario Party 2, Mario Kart, Mario Tennis, Mickey's Speedway USA, and Perfect Dark. The page features characters like Donkey Kong and Mario alongside details on how to order via mail, phone, fax, or email. This page is the main index, which is a cracking resource really, giving you a complete rundown on pretty much every N64 game they've reviewed. It's set out like a big database showing you the company that made it, how many players can get in on the action, and whether it uses the various peripherals like the controller, rumble, and expansion packs. It also points you to the issue, where the original review ran and, crucially, gives you the score and a little comment about what they thought. There's a handy key explaining what all the icons mean, and a breakdown of the different game genres, which is useful stuff. They highlight games that scored 90% and above, calling them a 64 sizzler, and the truly essential ones scoring 95% or more, which get the gold medal award. Those are definitely worth checking out. On the right side they've got their Our Top 10 list with little screenshots showing some absolute classics like Banjo-Tooie, the excellent Perfect Dark, Sin and Punishment, and GoldenEye. It's a solid list of must-play titles really. This Nindex is just a place to look up the details on games like the ones mentioned in the subscription offers on the previous page. The next page continues this excellent Nindex database, running through more of the games reviewed by the magazine, giving you all the essential details like who published it, how many players can join in, which peripherals it supports, and the issue number where you can find the full review. Crucially, it shows the score and a brief comment on how the game stacks up. Beyond the main list, they've pulled out some cracking 64 top lists, covering different genres. You've got the top shoot 'em ups, featuring absolute classics like Perfect Dark scoring 98% and GoldenEye at 95%, both shown with great screenshots. There's a look at the top adventure games, with the legendary Zelda, Ocarina of Time getting a massive 96%, alongside Resident Evil 2 and others. The platform games list highlights gems like Banjo-Tooie at 95% and Super Mario 64 with 92%, showing off some vibrant screenshots. For the fighting games, Tom and Jerry manage an impressive 95%, sitting alongside the WWF titles. Finally, they list the best 4-player games, essential for multiplayer sessions, which naturally includes GoldenEye and Banjo-Tooie again, both top-rated. This is all from issue 50 of 64 magazine, back in 2001. The next page carries on with that extensive Nindex database, running through even more games, from NHL Breakaway, 98, right through to Yoshi's Story. It gives you the essentials like the company, player count, peripheral support, the issue number for the full review, the score they gave it, and a quick comment. Alongside the main list, there are more of those handy 64 top lists breaking down the best games in different genres. You've got the top racing games, showing off classic F1 action. Then there's party/puzzle, featuring games like Bust-A-Move, perfect for multiplayer sessions, with a colourful screenshot. Sports games are covered, with a shot of IS-98, and strategy/simulation gets a look in with StarCraft 64. They've even included a list for the top Game Boy Color titles, featuring Tomb Raider and Cannon Fodder, which is a bit different, but hey, it's N64 magazine. And of course, the infamous list of the very worst games on the console, the 64 top bad games, hilariously topped by Carmageddon with a brutal 0%, complete with a fiery crash screenshot. It's fascinating to see how these games stacked up at the time. This page looks ahead to the next issue, highlighting the main feature on Paper Mario, showing screenshots and teasing the game's flat perspective. It also promises previews for Rugrats in Paris and Conker's Bad Fur Day, plus all the usual news, previews, cheats and gossip, packed into 100 pages. The next issue is set to be issue 51, and is available from the 22nd of March.